This is Max Englund, currently a 3-time Swedish boxing national champion, and recently he has won a couple of fights by lights out knockouts. This is a relatively rare feat in amateur boxing, and especially in his weight class. How could he possibly go from decision victories and occasional TKOs to convincing knockouts like this? Things like this do not happen by accident, and especially not if they have started to happen consistently and if they did not occur at the beginning of the athlete's career. And the fact that this is a fundamentally sound elite boxer just makes the shift even more impressive. We're not talking about a novice here. So in this video we will learn about the training adjustments that Max made that allowed him to win by more knockouts. Now, by all means, Max always had a potential for athleticism, and I noticed this the first time that I trained with him. But so do many other athletes like him. It is not as uncommon as it is often made up to be. What is uncommon, however, is actively working on a training intervention to bring forth those attributes, which is exactly what he has done for the 2 to 3 years. And he did so by mainly building a base of strength and then converting his ceiling for maximal strength into usable speed and power for boxing, as well as approaching his fights with more strategy. Now, Max is not your average boxer, he is also a full-time student of sports physiology, meaning that for his own strength and conditioning he is cognizant of the principles and he relies on scientifically established methods for athleticism. Before we get to that, let's start off by the psychological or mental adjustments that he made. First of all, no sane opponent in boxing will voluntarily stick their chin out, allowing you to hit them. You can have all of the power and speed in the world, but if you have no efficient means of delivering it to the target, it's not gonna matter. Over-attachment to an outcome, or desperation in other words, is a dangerous thing, in life or in sport. With desperation, you're prone to blocking the present moment because you're too focused on the outcome rather than the task at hand, what is in front of you. And if you're not focusing on the task, you further compound your chances of failing. So instead of going in there trying to predict an outcome or even force it, Max worked more on the process orientation, simply focusing on the game plan of his coaches while remaining flexible to unforeseen changes. In addition, he worked tons on mindfulness and observing his surroundings better. This is a skill that needs repetition and nobody is born with it, especially not in a distraction-ridden world like this. He went into every fight without any expectation of a knockout, just pacing and scoring points, flowing around, and then when the opportunity would present itself, he would instinctually unleash the cannon. So with that being said, how can you improve your patience in the ring? First of all, being aware of the principle itself is a good starting point. It will open up the necessary solutions. And second, you must drill. Lots and lots of drilling. In boxing there is a drill for everything, and there is not one drill that is equally important for 2 boxers. I cannot give you a list of drills here that are universally applicable. You must put yourself in scenarios which may possibly happen throughout a match, and you must work on those day after day, session after session, until they become just this ingrained part of your unconscious that you will then instinctually apply in a match. After having mastered the fundamentals of boxing, everyone needs individually adjusted drills at some point. The principle is simple, but it is far from easy. It's not easy to remain objective in a heated, live scenario of a boxing match. It is not easy to make appropriate decisions on the spot when the pressure is high. A lot of boxers that score high in the knockout department, they will often talk about aggression or bad intentions and things of this nature when approaching their fight. Some of them would even resort to bringing forth dark and repressed aspects about their unconscious, the shadow side as Jung referred to it as. Some would even be completely possessed by it. And for some fighters, they even construct a persona that simply transmits violence and intimidation or whatever facade that they want to present. For Max, however, he is actually quite calm and objective in there. He tells me that he doesn't really feel too much when he boxes, nor does he direct any aggression towards his opponents, which he states is his biggest strength because it allows him to be objective and simply focus on the task at hand. Fighters like this, they will often approach their fight in a pretty stoic manner. An example of a notable KO artist in this spectrum is probably Vladimir Klitschko. In sports as well as in life, personalities vary, and you cannot force one personality type upon another. It will come across as inauthentic, and there will be this natural friction. As a coach, I have started to take this principle very seriously. Before, a common theme in my coaching would be to create some ideal personality type for athletes, and I would just make an effort to try to force my athletes, so to speak, to follow this phantom universal model. With time, however, with maturity, I realize it's not very practical, because people are just so different, and there is no optimal personality type, no optimal approach for all of the athletes. The only thing that you can really do is to bring forth and enhance the aspects that fit one person. Max began his athletic journey by building a solid base of strength in all major movement patterns, and this was at a time where he was already in the elite level in boxing. So he started working on his squat strength, which is the lower body, the push strength, the pull strength, hip rotational strength and core strength, and he simply worked on this ceiling, increasing the ceiling of maximal strength, which would then pave the way for speed and power training. And meanwhile, he also worked on his high velocity strength, mainly through the use of heavy ballistic training as well as Olympic lifts. Those included loaded squat jumps and power cleans. And meanwhile, he also worked on strengthening of key vulnerable areas to boxing with the help of accessory lifts or single joint exercises. Some of those key areas included those of the knees, the shoulders, the hands and the lower back. This is known as prehab, injury prevention that is, and you must dedicate a large chunk of your training to this. So with time, Max reached a point where he simply had enough strength, and due to this novice boost, his explosive power qualities enhanced significantly as a result of this strength training focus as well. And this is one aspect that people are pretty unaware of. When you're new, you will enhance any athletic attribute by standard strength training alone, force and velocity included. So traditional velocity training interventions such as plyometrics, they are not really useful at this point. They become more relevant once you have a solid base of strength, because anything prior to that will already train your velocity by default. So now that Max had a solid strength base at a body weight of 80 kilograms, he could squat around 1.5 times body weight, he could bench press 100 kilograms for reps. It's pretty strong, not in powerlifting standards, but in boxing standards it's pretty good, and he basically reached a point of diminishing returns, like he would keep increasing strength, but it would not have any noticeable improvements in his velocity aspects. So what he did from here was to implement those raw velocity training methods more extensively, such as plyometrics and ballistic training and even Olympic lifts more often. What this does is it converts his previously built ceiling of force production into raw velocity applicable to boxing. Here we can see some clips of him performing standard plyometric exercises and ballistic training, and as evident, it is in the beginning phases and it is relatively uncoordinated and sometimes clumsy. Fast forward 1 year and you can see the tremendous improvements that he has made. He's more snappy now, he's more twitchy, he's more coordinated. And this was perfectly reflected in his matches as well. So does this mean that he would disregard strength training altogether? Absolutely not. Athleticism is in constant change and nothing excludes the other. It is a matter of prioritization based on your current needs at that time. No matter what your priority is for that period, all other attributes they must be preserved as well. Otherwise they will diminish very quickly. When speaking of strength, power and speed, one very sad fact is the following. It is gained very slowly and it is lost very fast. Therefore maintenance and consistency are paramount, no matter what season you find yourself in.